I think we better start then, haven't we? Well, thank you everybody for attending the Leisure Services Committee meeting. As a good evening, welcome to the meeting. On the Leisure Services meeting being held on Tuesday, the 5th of September. The Woodley Town Council meetings are now recorded live. Are streamed live, stored on the Town Council's YouTube channel. The virtual attending this meeting, you consent to having your image and audio recorded for this purpose. If you do not wish your image or your audio to be recorded, then please do not stay for the meeting. Those in attendance, we're not expecting a fire drill this evening, so if you hear a fire alarm, please head to the nearest fire exits and congregate at the fire assembly point by the open centre at the front of Woodford Park. Thank you very much. So I'll take item 1 on the agenda then, which are apologies. I think we've got.
We have one apology from Councillor Furniture.
Okay, excellent. So I will take item 2 then, which is declarations of interest. Does anyone have anything they wish to declare? So I'll go on to item 3, which is minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of June and approve those minutes. Does anyone have any comments they'd like to make on those minutes? Then I will be happy to approve this. Actually, no, let's say that to all those in favour of approving those minutes from last week, please raise their hand. All those to the contrary? All those the same? Those minutes are signed off. I will then take item 4 on the agenda, which is budgetary control, and to note the report on page 3. This I will hand over to
Thank you. Just a couple of points to note on expenditure. Again, just some notes on ones that are over where they might otherwise be. Football slightly over due to seed purchase earlier in the year, which is what we'd expect. Amenity got slightly over due to some repairs, but again, nothing out of the ordinary. It's just routine stuff. The public toilet slightly over on utility costs. I'm having a look at that because there was one that was set up later than the council's other contracts for energy and water, so I do want to revisit that in this year. Income wise, Woodford Park Leisure Centre, if you're doing well, sorry, this is the page. So that's a gym, course of sports hall and counter sales all above 33%. Ground maintenance, that's invoice cut-ins up at Bullmarsh Open Space. Bowling Green income is low. That's to do with the annual invoice, which hasn't been settled yet. There's a query with us. We're dealing with that, so that will be sorted soon. And allotment obviously is low because the annual invoices don't go out until December. Everything else is hopefully where we'd expect it to be and the right way round. And the income's up and expenditures this month.
Francis, do you have any questions?
Happy to note the report, Chairman.
Yes, and it's happy to note the report. Yes, thank you very much. And I'll go on to item 5. Woodford Park Leisure Centre Sports Development and Activities Report.
Thank you very much. So I'll start off as always by talking about the gym. At the last meeting, I had a little note that the committee wanted some information about the number of members that joined, as well as the number that cancelled within that period. So I've added a little paragraph at the top there, just to note that we had 76 new members join from the last meeting to this meeting, or as close as I could get to writing the report, should I say. 70 of those are ongoing memberships, 5 were short-term memberships, which is kind of quite common with uni students when they come back and they just want to join for a month. And 1 was a prize winner from Woodley Carnival. Through the same period, we had 66 members cancel their memberships. And as you can see in the little chart below, I've kind of tried my best to get as many people to give me a reason why. The only one I'll really go into any detail there about is the move to another gym, because I think it's the most relevant. Those 3 members that cancelled, the reasons for moving to another gym, 1 was because he works from home a lot since COVID and he's built a gym in his garage. 1 wanted to join a gym with a swimming pool, and 1 has been given a free membership through their work. So there's not really much that we do of any of those. As probably expected this time of year, moving away and heading to university are quite high. To be honest, I think they almost blend into one. It just depends on what the person individually says back to us, whether they say they're moving away, because some people just relocate to a different part of the country and some people just go to university. Obviously, some of those students will come back again in December for a month, probably pay for a month, and then go again in January. Income, there's not too much to report, though. As you can see, it's been pretty steady this year, which is nice. We haven't had any unexpected closes like I did last year. So yeah, income is as I would expect it to be this time of year. So moving on to the Leisure Centre itself, it's been a strange summer, to be honest. It's been wet and miserable, except for now. When I wrote this report, it was horrendous weather. So most of this report doesn't make any sense anymore. But so there has been some positives through it. So the family racket attack scheme that we've run, which we have run pretty much every holiday for the last kind of 4 or 5 years, performed really well this year. So when I wrote this report, we had 760 individual transactions recorded. That was kind of towards the end of August. I was able to put this together. I've got a final figure today because the summer's now over. We had 1,066 individual transactions. 818 of those were for badminton, 147 for tennis, and 101 for table tennis. I believe that's the highest we've ever recorded through a summer holiday.
That's really good.
It's become a really popular scheme.
Yeah.
I think it has been helped because of the weather.
Yeah.
So that the 818 badminton is probably, you know, unlikely to happen again. If we get a nice summer, and I'd assume tennis would probably be a bit further up. To compare that to some previous years is a little bit difficult because last year we were closed for the electrical works, so we only recorded 351 transactions. But in the summer of 21, we recorded 826, so it's up on that by about 200. So it has done well this year. And of course, we'll run it again in October half term and Christmas and ongoing. So in here, I've written the paddle and pool's been really quiet compared to previous years. Scrap that completely. It's been yesterday. So we've spent a lot of time over the last 2 days dealing with problems. It's been really busy. It's been good, of course. As I've written there, I was originally going to close the pool this Sunday. I think I will probably not be closing it this Sunday. Exactly, yeah. But I think the one in Caversham closed last weekend, and we've had a lot of people therefore come to visit us who would originally go there. That's what a lot of people have been coming and saying to us anyway. We're only one of the only ones that remains open at the moment. Most have been winterized already. So yeah, we're getting a lot of new people, new faces come to the building, which is
always encouraging. They come and do stuff, don't they?
They do, yeah. And I mean, a lot of people are buying an ice cream and a drink, so our supplies are pretty much there at the moment. But again, that's a good thing. So I will probably keep the pool open until kind of mid to late September, but I will judge it based on the weather. If it turns, I'll close it straight away because it would be completely underused, waste of resources. The tender for the gym equipment lease went live in June, and that deadline passed at the end of July. We received a good number of submissions, actually, 13 in total. It took some time to go through and evaluate and score them. We had some really good submissions actually this time around, and we're a bit more experienced with it now following the first time which we went into it. Really. That lease expires mid-November, 22nd November. And this, the final recommendations are going to be considered by Strategy and Resources next week, I believe. So that's all positive, I believe. And I think we've got the one we've recommended, I think, is a really solid submission. So good. The Octalis Summer Pool Party and Barbecue was a little bit of a trial from me. I always get asked from different organisations whether they can run some kind of summer event in the pool. And I've always said no, because I've always been afraid that mixing a private event with the public using the pool was a recipe for disaster. Because the weather was so poor, I decided to let them have a go at it this year just to see what it would be like. It actually went really well, and they invited clients from their whole community over. Again, lots of new people coming to the centre. It was good fun. They had inflatables in the pool and water pistols and a barbecue out the front.
It was a glorious day.
It was actually
it smelled delicious, but alas, I couldn't have it.
Okay. It was actually quite good, and the weather held for them mostly. A bit drizzle, and, you know, but they were fine. They had a great time. Whether or not I'd do it again, I don't know, because I think if it was a really busy day in the pool, it wouldn't quite work. What we did to kind of make it a little bit smoother in the morning was open it a bit earlier. So if we got in earlier, cleaned it earlier, and let them have a couple of hours when normally it wouldn't be open. But at the same time, I didn't want to turn down public entry to it for obvious reasons. So, but that seemed to work okay. We didn't have any issues with the day. And finally, probably the big thing I've been working on over the last kind of 2 to 3 months is our children's party provision. I know that Kevin's got a bit more in his report about why we've had to make this change. We've had to make a significant change to the children's parties that we offer. We are a very popular venue for children's parties. The last financial year, we hosted 200 of our own parties, not including any private parties where people just hire the rooms and facilities from us. So it gives you an idea about how often we deal with inquiries like that. The new format basically means that we become more of a venue for hire rather than a service. So previously, we would organise the games and activities for parties and be a bit more hands-on with what was happening. Now parents hire our equipment and our rooms, and we basically kind of give it to them to use and take up more of a supervisory role. To be honest, that one of the weaknesses of our previous provision was that the staff running it basically the quality was determined by how good their quality was, and of course that varies from person to person. In this way, the equipment's the same for every party, the provision is the same, so there's an element of consistency that we didn't have before, which I think is really going to be popular in the future. To support that, we bought £6,500 of new party equipment, including what I think the biggest bouncy castle I've ever seen. I didn't quite realise how big it was going to be. I measured it widthways, but didn't realise that the height of it was actually almost too high to be in our sports hall. It's going to be amazing, really, really good, and I think it'll be very popular. It's also set up in the future to be a disco bouncy castle, so it's got a roof on it and a hole for a speaker at the back, a little bit for one of those lights that twirls around, and I think it's going to be really, really good. It's just that there you go. Yeah, we did have a lot of adults when we were setting up the bouncy castle for the first time. Pete Brown would want to have a go in it, and yeah. In addition to that, we formed a few partnerships with some external party providers, which basically means that what we used to offer, we still can offer, but through those partners, which is great. U Sports is one of the companies, and just based on the corner, that we work with all the time. They do sporty parties and Nerf gun parties, which we also used to offer. Kids and Karts offer go-kart parties. We actually had our first one of these this weekend just gone, went really well. So they have an inflatable track and some electric go-karts which the kids can drive around. Kids love it, of course. Yeah, crash into each other all the time. And then Tutus and Tiaras, which is they offer princess themed birthday parties. So of course, I can't really give you any feedback on the success of it because we've only had one so far. So it went well, that one. But when we meet again in November, I'll have some feedback.
Sure, those princesses really appreciate. Okay, before I note the report, does anyone have any questions? Danny?
Yeah, just on the children's party, I think it's a good probably investment because we have young children, we always out of places. Just wanted to check, you probably have in place, but what criteria will be used to measure the success? Like when you say you want to measure the success with this new investment.
Measure the success.
So how does it look like? Do you have any criteria for that?
So we currently have a feedback form from parents, which is currently set up for the old structure, which people rated quality out of 5, the tea room out of 5, the equipment out of 5, staff out of 5, booking process, things like that. And we did that for every single party that we basically run ourselves over the last 2 to 3 years. It was something that we kind of wanted to see progression in our provision. We're going to do something very similar. We have to reword the questions a little bit because the staff aren't as relevant as they used to be. So actually we need to ask things more like, what do you think about our new bouncy castle and stuff like that. And what we tend to do is put the information together and publish it. So we get let's say we get 4.7 out of 5 for the quality of parties. I think that's a good thing. Parents can look at and we say, yeah, this is out of 150 parties, but of course we need to run some first. And then the other one, of course, is income, as always, which that's one of the things I'll report back, and I'll try my best to have a comparison for that. Not sure how I'm going to do that yet.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 2 questions. One, if I may, Ed, on the gym tender. It says a final recommendation is going to the finance strategy meeting, which rather suggests that the recommendation will be focused on finance rather than the quality of the equipment. I hope that you will have an input into the final recommendation. It won't just be based on money criteria.
Yeah, if I can just elaborate a little bit, we went through a scoring criteria, which was a scoring matrix taking account of cost as one element, but absolutely it's about the equipment and the service behind it, service support, which has been a really key thing we've had up until now. We relied on, as Ed said, we were better able to specify that in the tender this time around to make sure that was already built.
And finally, Chairman, on the question of the bouncy castle, I am aware that there have been issues with bouncy castles and serious injuries as a result of children playing boisterously or whatever. Given that leisure staff won't be supervising the bouncy castle, can you assure us that if there is an accident, the council won't be liable? Is there any way we can offset that liability?
There is, and that's absolutely what this was about. In a very back to front way, you couldn't get insurance on the basis that you were manning it yourself. You were not able to get insurance for that. You can get hires insurance, no problem at all, even if it's been used on your own premises, because you're hiring it to somebody else and effectively deferring the liability to that person. Provided you've done certain things. Obviously, we still maintain them. We have the appropriate checks and everything for that. We check them before it's actually passed over to the person that's going to be using it, and all those things. While it's in operation, it is insured on the basis that the person who's hired it is now responsible for the period of time.
Given that most people don't know how to operate a bouncy castle, will they be given guidance?
Yeah, we have printed guidelines. We issue them with that, and they obviously have to sign to say that they've fully understood that. If we've got any reservations or issues with that, that we think they haven't understood it, or we think they're not following it, we reserve the right to step in and cover the system.
Any more questions? Robert?
Ed, on your form, you've got 70 ongoing memberships. That's 70 new that are ongoing, not 70 existing ones.
No, 70 new between that period. Yeah.
Excellent. It's good. So we've got a net gain of members each month. Could we have could we have a graph that shows that this August compared to next August, so we can compare year on year and month on month? A nice simple graph of 70 in, 66 out for August. You know, and whatever there is each month after. So it can very easily just look and see what the gains are each year and year. And I think we've got 76 new members on in August.
Phenomenal,
It's
isn't it?
amazing.
Phenomenal, yeah.
Well, sorry, June to August. It's amazing because it's, it's summer when we don't do that.
Yeah, it's normally after Christmas when everyone joins.
I think it's great.
No, normally I would expect to be honest, a net loss during that period of time. It's quite common for people to leave through the summer and rejoin September, October time. So.
And one further thing, I was asked today, is there an age limit on the paddling ball?
I get asked that question more often than you can imagine. Our official answer has always been it's designed for toddlers and families. However, if you've got a family with a toddler and they have an older sibling who's helping look after it, it becomes very difficult to man the pool, and the pool is unmanned. So we kind of intervene when we get reports of problems, which we do when it's busy all the time. When there's boisterous behaviour, we intervene as well, and we ask people to leave, or if people are riding bikes through it, we've had that before. Barbecues, we had a firework as well. But
It is under CCTV.
yes, but not that we'd be able to, stare at the screen constantly.
No.
So we tend to respond to problems that people come to reception and say, "Oh, this has happened." So we had yesterday someone within about 2 minutes, a family turned up and scooter was stolen, a phone was stolen, the bike was stolen. So the police are involved, the police come out, and those are the kind of things we do all the time. In terms of the age limit, there isn't one officially set. It's almost like a family facility, and we kind of trust people to act responsibly. But
Yes, we tell that person that 45-year-olds are not allowed to go and call their food in the paddling ball.
Any more questions? Well, I know the report. Noted then, thank you very much. So we're going to item 6, which is parks and buildings, which received a report from 7.
Thank you. The first item there we've just discussed, which was the insurance to do with the children's parties. I'm not going over that again. Function room, kitchen amenities team has installed a new kitchen in what's called the tea room, which is the function room area there, which is used by hirers and Octalis. I've done that in-house at really low cost, done a really good job on that. And we've had some repairs to the boiler in the rented flat of the centre. Woodford Park, really chuffed. Green Flag achieved for the 6th year running, and I'm really proud of the grounds team and the work that they've put in this year in kind of raising the standard of the grounds works. They've got an extra member of staff who's been in around a year now as well, and that's made a difference. The Friends group, likewise, just, you know, the beds have looked absolutely fantastic, and parks looked really good this year. We haven't had the feedback yet from Green Flag, which we get every year, which is a really useful document which we use for future ongoing improvement. As soon as we do get that, I'll circulate that to members. We did that last time. I think that's helpful for a bit of context about the things we're doing well, things where we might need to do a bit of work. And it's not just about grounds maintenance, it is about a number of other things. We always score really highly on the community elements and usage and things like that. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's fine.
Love Parks Week took place in July. We ran an online quiz and distributed some seed cards to mark this. We are looking at if we can do something more with that next year, and I know that's something we'll be talking to you, David, and your committee about next year, where we can do something a bit more with that. Antisocial behaviour this summer has been a real problem. We've had a lot of graffiti on everything, this building, in the toilets, on the windows, on the play equipment, the new play equipment, even on some of the trees, spray painted. We've had a real hit this summer. Tends to go in cycles for some reason. It's not every year, and it's actually quite unusual for us to get that
We haven't had
level.
a graffiti like that for a very long time.
No, and we've even had someone on the side of the Miles building there, which we've never had since it's been here. So that's been really frustrating. There's just been that element through the summer. Moving on from that, we had a break-in at Coronation Hall on the evening of the 7th of August, where there seems to be a deliberate attempt to cause some significant damage to the hallway. They got in and tried to damage the gas boiler. Luckily, the neighbour in the House of Close was able to phone the police straight away. Police came out, fire crew came out. We were able to secure it and make it safe. Damage was just under a couple of hundred quid worth of actual damage, but the intent was a bit more worrying. In speaking with following up with the police, they are aware of at least one of the individuals who was involved, so they're pursuing that. So just really frustrating. Garden of Remembrance, we've had a lot of issues with that. David's just informed me that he's had witnessed something again this evening even with the gate locked. There's some young people have hopped over the fence, and we've had some damage in there. The grounds team have been trying to keep an eye on it during the day, obviously, while they're working. That's more difficult in the evenings when it would normally be open. We did take a decision to close it earlier for a period of time to the end of the summer holidays. Clearly that may have had some effect, but on an evening like tonight, for example, where it's locked up and people got in anyway, it hasn't. So again, just a really frustrating thing. I hope it will subside. Slightly more positive, lots of work going on in the park, various tree work scheduled for September, all routine preventative maintenance, carrying out the sort of second phase of works from the tree survey we had carried out last year. The knee rail fencing around the park scheduled for to start in October. That's replacing all of that low-level timber fencing. We've done some of it out here, the Rotary Garden, but the rest of it all needs doing. Some of that's in pretty bad shape. We had Beaches Fun Fair visit in July, which was very successful, and may be coming back again later in the year. The Bowls Green, the new regime will commence on there very shortly. I did mention to the committee previously, we got some professional advice following the problems we had during the droughty year last year, when we didn't have sufficient irrigation on there, which did quite a lot of damage. We got some advice and a new regime drawn up by a chap who's very helpful. He's Bowls Greenkeeper of the Year from the Grounds Maintenance Association. So he knows what he's doing, and he's given us some a good program of work, which is a bit more intense than we've done before. It's a deeper scarifying. It's a removal of a lot more stuff from underneath than we've ever really done before. So it's a more brutal regime in the first instance, but should yield much better results for next season going forwards. Unauthorised encampments, members are no doubt aware, we had 2 occasions, one on the 17th of August, one on the 30th of August. In Woodford Park, both occasions involved a forced entry to the site through cutting off of locks. The second occasion actually barging our staff out of the way, cutting the lock off and coming in. Very frustrating. We did engage bailiffs immediately. I took a decision to do that, given the high profile places that they were, very close to residences, right next to play areas, etc. And I think there's a real potential for those encampments to grow if we can sort them out quickly. There was a cost to that, but we were able to deal with them swiftly, and on both occasions the encampments were removed by that evening that they arrived, which was good. The trouble is, you're only kind of moving the problem on. I know they went on to Wokingham Land, not far away, and then on to somewhere else. But we are taking some steps to increase the security where we can on open spaces. It's very difficult. We've got open spaces which aren't fortresses. They're community spaces. We need access to them as well. But we have identified some relatively simple things we can do and looked at some longer term things which we think are going to help. That'll be a combination of things from just different types of lock, anything that can make it more difficult or more time consuming to gain access. Because actually we did realise there, even with a decent lock, if it's not a closed shackle lock and it's easy to get to it, it takes 3-4 seconds. You can get to it with a decent bit of kit, and that's what happened.
So are they ever fined? I mean, it's deliberate damage. We should be able to get money back off these people. They are, why are they allowed to run loot riot like this over?
It's very difficult, and it's part of a wider issue. What I did make a point of doing was reporting the criminal damage immediately as well. So there is a police report for that. Information that we've got, witnesses, etc. Where that goes, probably not very far. So I suspect just due to the difficulty of
All
trying
you
to
be
enforce
is well
that
insured and also come up with security measures to secure. But it's not, we wish you didn't have to do that.
Yes.
Then obviously no one wants to be in that situation.
If somebody else had damaged their lock, they
Yeah,
would
yeah.
be hauled up and fined, wouldn't they?
Finding these people, though, is the other
They
aspect.
knew where they were, didn't they? They were inside Woodford Park.
Thank you, Ray.
Never mind.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. Yes.
So just to raise a question, we're talking about replacing the postal rail fencing around the park next month.
Yeah.
Is that the right material to be using? Because if I could take those posts out like that, should they not be replaced with some steel bars? Because if we've got nice big gates, you just got to go knock them, put out of the way.
What we've been looking at is there's particularly in Woodford Park, due to the curve of the road,
Yeah.
there's only certain places that would be appealing to do that, even if you took the fence out. So we're looking at the potential to put additional posts in certain places without obliterating that whole thing and making it look not very nice. Because a lot of those areas, due to the slopes and the angles, we'd really struggle to get anything anyway. So it's just identifying those places and reinforcing
What about
the
ditch?
thought about that. That's,
One big deep ditch.
Is it Lowell Park on the Russian Way they've done that, I think?
yeah, it's another option. It will be a combination of things, I think, in terms of locks, bollards, ditches, and things that just make it more difficult.
Yeah.
So that it's less appealing. We are currently recruiting for a new maintenance officer for the amenities team, which will have a great benefit in freeing up the amenities manager to do some of the stuff that he's been struggling to keep on top of with increased requirements for compliance checks and things on the amount of things we've got. We've got a lot of buildings, we've got a lot of parks and equipment. So we're looking forward to getting a new member of team in that team. But that also enables us to carry on with in-house works, which is taking quite a lot of money and gives us a really good result. They do a great job of maintaining the buildings. They care about it. And you wouldn't get it with the contractor. It's just going to help us with that. We've gone out to find someone who's experienced, so they can hit the ground running a bit and really contribute to that team. And yeah, we're hopeful we'll have somebody. Allotments, just to update, there's currently around 40 on the waiting list, but that's always a moving number. The tenants committee are carrying out plot inspections. Now they've just done their sort of first round, so we've got a whole load of letters just gone out. We expect a number of plots to become vacant over the coming weeks. A meeting date for the task and finish group to consider changes to the tenancy. I'm hoping to circulate that quite soon. I've been in contact with the chair of the tenants committee. I think she's been super busy in various things. She has come back to me, and they have managed to identify a couple of people from the committee, but also get a message out to non-committee members, which was something that was suggested under terms of reference, so that we've got a mix of individuals on that group. So I'm hoping we get a meeting in the diary very soon, because that needs to come back to the next meeting of leisure services, so that we can square that away in November.
That will be in person.
It will be in person, yeah. Community halls, just a note, both have been decorated, and there's some lighting around the car park area in Chapel Hall, where it's pretty dark and dingy. They're on sensors and pointing the right way, so they don't disturb neighbours.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Mike?
Yes, Chairman. I just wondered whether we could turn a negative into a positive. I'm referring to the graffiti. Obviously, it's antisocial, but have we considered a graffiti wall so that young people can display their talents in an area that would be appreciated, rather than areas that are not appreciated?
We used to have one, which worked really well. It had some really impressive bits of art on it at one point. It was just down by the side of the skate park there. And it was a project that just around the corner instigated and managed. They actually built it quite a few years ago, 15 years plus ago. Unfortunately, it came into disrepair and had to be removed. It just got old. It was a metal frame that had actually just rotted away. We haven't had anybody to kind of reinstate that or do it. It wasn't just there for people to use. They used to actually talk to people and kind of manage how that went, and that was quite a good thing. I think it's definitely something that we can throw back into the mix in the context of youth service provision and through the community youth partnership. And I think that's it worked very well. So I know it polarised views a little bit. Some people really didn't like it there. But we have actually got in a folder down at the office some pictures of some really good artwork that was captured on there historically. So it's something we could put back into the mix.
And secondly, just something else. As I am on the allotments task and finish working party, have we written to the Allotments and Gardens Association to get a copy of what I would hope would be a model tenancy agreement that we can adopt?
Yeah.
Rather than reinvent the wheel?
Yeah, we have the task for that group is not to start from scratch. It's a copy of the existing tenancy agreement, which is based on the model document, albeit it's had some tweaks over the years. But yeah.
Done a few years ago to bring it.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you for actually also the quick way that you'd handled the incursion onto our parks. I think that was really good.
Yes, Karen.
Yes, it's about the item under Woodford Park and the green flag. I'm sure that part of the reason for its success was the work of the Friends of Woodford Park. And I just think it's a shame that wasn't mentioned in the report. I don't know whether that can be at one stage, but it's a significant contribution. And I think we should be.
Indeed, I did just mention it there, but you're right, I could have mentioned it.
Any other questions before we move on to the next agenda? Okay, then I'll move on to item 7, which is Friends of Woodford Park updates. David, did you want to approach us and give us an update from on item 7 of our agenda?
Well, that's the current situation. I mean, what our figure is at the moment, that we operate to constitution, which is 1,500 parks in the country, that operate under this thing. We're recognised to be following that format. When we launched 8 years ago, we used to have public meetings. The minutes that came to this meeting, but we never had, the minutes were never really discussed in any detail, so we never had any feedback. Feedback I got from people attending the meeting was pointless, we're not getting anywhere, sort of thing. Then come the pandemic and we had stopped meetings.
Stop meetings,
And we
yeah.
never really resurrected the idea. So I'm very conscious that we're running a group that's not working as it should, you know. So the question is basically, is this committee prepared to listen to our comments again?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've spoken to a number of councillors and I'm prepared to add you to the agenda as and when you have a report to make. If you'd like to attend this meeting to give a report, you would be like a number of other groups that have come to our attention over the years and want to make a report on that basis. And I'm very happy to do that. I think it'd be a good thing and we welcome your input. Fine.
Thank you, Chairman. Interesting this. In a former life, as town clerk at Chesham, Lowndes Park had what's called not a friends of, but the users group. So that in actual fact, it sort of encompasses not just your very good work in gardening, but it encompasses all of the people who use Woodford Park. And that way you can get younger people in, you can get families who can be involved in the fun days and they can have a direct input to the council, which I think is what you're trying to achieve here. So
Yeah.
my suggestion would be try and have a word with the town clerk at Chesham and see how their users group is actually evolving, because it was an excellent. And they actually had a membership scheme. They had membership cards, and they collected a small annual subscription, which they were able to use to beautify the park with trees and etc. So that would be
It's a really good idea. Was there anything else you wanted to add? Just to bring to our attention your reports.
No, as I think I said in the report, we started the garden group with the intentions. Discussions with Kevin first of all, which thank you originally, just the upkeep of the garden for remembrance. He suggested it was a good park. Then one of the councillors at the time suggested the garden of the Greens, which has been our most successful venture in gardens. But we've lost sight of the theme, for saying.
Well, if you restart your biannual meetings, do let us know. And one of us will try and attend that to represent the council. Robert,
Carol's had a hand up for a little.
Sorry, Carol. I wanted to give the friends a bit more.
Yeah, I was actually before Mike as well.
Yeah,
Be bold with your hand, Carol.
Yes.
Well, I assume the chairman's going to look.
Sorry, yes, yeah.
I had the same problem on plans last Tuesday.
You've got to be bold.
Yeah, I shouldn't have to be, but Chesham is a good idea. They're constant or regular winners of the Britain in Bloom. But that is, as I understand it, that's one of the aims about flowers and trees, etc., etc. And I think that the Friends of Woodford Park is probably a bit more than that. It's about being between us and the residents, if you like, because they're approachable as they're doing working in Woodford Park. Pleased to hear it can be an item on the agenda. But I think where we've lost track or we've failed is that we have a representative on the Friends of Woodford Park, but that representative never comes back to us. And I think we've got another one now. I know the previous one never did, but we have one now, and it should be part of their remit to bring a report back to this committee.
I think that would be the case, Carol, if there was a report to bring back. But of course, like you said, there hasn't been a meeting since before the pandemic. So I think that's probably the reason why we have not had a report. Robert.
Now, are the councils recommended? The councils representative, not
Yes.
the word long, is Bill.
Bill Sullivan.
He's not on this committee.
He was last year.
Do you think we should, whether we should have somebody that's on this committee actually on the friendly?
Ideally, I would say yes to that.
Makes sense.
And maybe that's what we should look in as a committee, to make a change there.
So constitutionally, how can we do that, Kevin?
Yeah, we can do that. We've got, if you've got a nomination from somebody from this committee.
Would we have to go to the?
It's generally noted at full council,
Yeah, we'll go to full
the
council.
outside body appointments, but because they are generally just noted, if the incumbent wishes to stand down and you wish to replace, then an email to us 3 days or more before full council will enable us to add that to.
If there was somebody at this point in terms of saving some time going forward.
Yeah, I think it'd be polite to ask Bill before we sort
No, no, absolutely.
of kicked him out without final leave.
Yeah, I mean, nothing would happen, obviously, but if you had in mind somebody who might.
What does the panel think?
That's the right thing to do. We should have somebody that represents from this committee, as well as allowing you, an opportunity on the agenda when you need to. And to provide us with a report, will come like you have this evening, just to give us the highlights, to tell us what's what, so.
Well, in order to expedite things, obviously speak to Bill as well. I would happily be this committee's link with Friends of Woodley Park.
We'd be happy
If I can
to
sort my dialogue out by then.
sort of heat. Okay, we'll leave that with us. We'll talk to Bill and we will let you know in due course. Is that good for you?
Yes, no, that sounds.
Good, all right.
Well, I would have, the previous councillor didn't even know for 6 months, so he was representative.
No, I think it's important.
That's very.
Like you said, actually, and like I said to a few other people, the fact that we've had the green flag for the last sort of 5 or 6 years has been in no small part to your contribution as from Woodley Park. And yes, you partner well with the maintenance team and, you work together. And I think it's a real testament to parents, both groups actually, but for you particularly, because you're all volunteers getting out there doing it for Woodley in the community. I think it's fabulous. So, yeah.
The other point is that we're out there in our high vis chats every time when we work, and we get so many comments coming back from the general public. I've only been in the park, I've got a minute this morning, and I had a lady coming, wanted to know where the car park was for the open centre.
You see, you should wear those high vis jackets, that's what it is.
We do get the feedback that way.
It's very important. Thank you for that. Yeah. Thank you. All right, then, that's, nobody else has got any more comments on item 7. Then I shall turn to item 8, which is the 3G pitch steering group subcommittee, and to members their reports. Does any member have any comments that they'd like to make?
There is a recommendation.
Is there? There is a recommendation.
Would you like me to summarise the meeting?
Please do.
Councillor Firma chaired the meeting. He's not here tonight, unfortunately. But I think I can summarise. It was a very positive meeting. In essence, the message was the 3G pitch is operating extremely well, and demand is such we could probably fill another one, which is kind of a nice problem to have in some ways. That there's so much demand, there's so much football going on for young people in Woodley, but actually we struggle to service all of the teams that we've got. So it's pretty chock-a-block. One of the ways to provide more capacity in there, the suggestion was whether the council would be minded to extend the operating hours by 30 minutes on Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursdays, so that those slots could be filled by those teams. It's something Leisure had looked at some time ago, and in with a lot of other things, it just didn't progress. One of the things we know we do need to do is provide a new sound assessment surveys in order to support a request to planning to make that change if the committee's minded to do that. The team seems to think that will make a significant difference to their their weekly allotment, so to speak, in terms of time. We did, and Ed took some time again to talk with them about how that could be rejigged, because there's been some internal changes within the clubs, which has changed things a little. So Ed did revisit that. The upshot was that it's still chock-a-block and no one wanted to change anything, so there wasn't really much we could do. But this is something that would free up some further time on the pitch. In terms of other things to note, it was just it was like another check, really. Report back to the Football Foundation on the fact that we do have a fund in place for replacement of the carpet when that becomes ready for replacement. And the pitch is performing well financially and in terms of inclusion of clubs and of groups. So that was all very positive. There is a recommendation, excuse me, there that the committee consider applying to Oakham Borough Council for a variation to the planning consent to allow the pitch to operate to 9:30 on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday each week. The other item that was considered was the means of consultation with residents on that and how that might best be done. And for this committee to also consider how it might want to do that.
Right. Just to extend for half an hour.
Yeah.
How much additional income would that provide?
Question.
Depending on take up, anywhere between £2,000 to £3,000 a year.
I'm not just looking at it from a financial point of view, because obviously providing a service for people to use it. And I'm not being dismissive of £3,000, but to possibly upset the residents of Farringdon Close for that half an hour, I question whether it would be worth doing so, and also what would the cost of the application be. That's just my point of view.
The application probably not very much. The sound survey probably a couple of thousand.
But I don't want to dismiss the fact that it's a vision of a service that footballers, which I'm not one.
I mean, my personal view is that I don't think 30 minutes should make a lot of difference, but to the residents of Farringdon Close, that might make a bit of difference.
I get paid at 9:30, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if we were to consider something like this, we'd have to consider maybe doing just the summer months like that, rather than the year round or some sort of condition to limit the impact. I mean, a lot will depend on what the sound survey comes up with. To be fair, I mean, you've got another 60 to 70 decibels going until half nine. I just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think what the sound survey is likely to give you is whether it falls within, planning parameters.
Planning parameters,
Organisation parameters for noise, which is likely to. I suspect it's not going to be signed. So the committee might consider whether that's an expensive one to do if it's not committed to changing the hours.
How many children would be using it in that time?
I would suggest it be adults using it during that time. And I would imagine that what the clubs will do is rejig their sessions to fit within the earlier hours as well. So as a guess, I would assume the extra 30 minutes probably would result per day in an extra 30 to 40 people playing.
So if it's adults mainly, there shouldn't be that much noise then, surely.
Not quite as much noise, but there's lots of noise, yeah.
When it was first built, we dealt with noise complaints a fair amount, probably for the first 3 to 6 months. I haven't had a single one since that time, 5, 6 years.
I was going to say, because I haven't heard many complaints come through this council in a very long time.
No.
But at the start, right, it was very unhappy at the start.
Yes, I realise that one. I remember about that.
Yeah, it's a big thing.
But was that because they thought it was going to be noisy and it wasn't as noisy? Or maybe the death went out.
I mean, obviously, the second point on here is about, the consultation, the sort of method of consultation. The right to the residents of Farringdon to ask, what their current opinion is on the amount of impact.
There's only a few of them, aren't there? I mean, would it be best to actually personally go around and?
Well, it might very well be good to that. And see, because I'm thinking David Bragg, who lives with Farringdon, and usually gets the comments if there's going to be any comments. I mean, maybe he's the guy to speak to see if people wouldn't mind going around, you know, those residents that are affected on that side
Yes.
of Farringdon Coast to see what their opinion would be to extending it by 30 minutes for 3 days a week.
Yeah.
Does that
I
sound
think that
like
would
a
be
good?
better.
Very good idea.
I think that's probably the easiest and most straightforward.
But should we put more formal footing on it, and as a council, heading note paper, just write to those residents a letter saying, what would your opinion be on it?
Yeah.
Putting the onus on David, who's quite a busy.
I think
That's a good
we
idea.
can probably leave it to Kevin and Matthew to draw something up
Yeah.
later or something like that.
Yeah.
And then talk to David to see if he wants to hand deliver them for a discussion, whether he wants to just post it to the letterbox and see.
It doesn't
That's what I
even,
think
I
that
mean,
is.
it's just as long as somebody goes along and talks to them, I think a lot of that,
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah.
it's personal, more personal than actually
I think
saying.
it is more personal, actually, to be honest with you. I think we get that feedback. And if that's positive, then
Then you can start
then we
doing
can start doing the,
Yeah.
we can think about the planning application and spending money for the sound survey, because that's going to be, but yeah. So why don't we do that? Does everyone agree that that's a good way to move forward? Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, okay. So we'll move on to item 9 then, which is youth support services. And I'll go on to item 8. Just some, please, if you don't mind, that'll be very good.
Okay, so the Statutory Resources Committee on the 13th of June resolved to place the 27,000 budgeted for youth services in this year, along with the 3,000 budgeted for community youth partnership allocation into an earmarked reserve and made available on a grant award basis for groups supporting young people in Woodley. Basically, in the absence of any service level agreement or contract with any youth support provider, means that we can spend that money that's been budgeted in this year and make sure that that goes for the benefit of young people in Woodley in this year. It was also resolved that the criteria for allocating grants for that money would be considered by the Leisure Services Committee. Members are asked to consider the proposed criteria Appendix 9A with a view to making a recommendation on these two strategy and resources. The purpose of the Leisure Services considering those, if at all possible at this point, just means that we can move it on quicker because that recommendation could go to SNR next week and we get the ball rolling on allocating those funds. Otherwise, we're going to run out of year again, and if we can avoid that, that would be really good because we could get those grants being really that much sooner. The draft guidelines, they're very similar and based on the draft the guidelines we have for other grants that we already provide. So the format's very similar in guidance and would work in a similar way. One specific area to consider there is there's a suggested maximum grant value in there, capped at £3,000 per grant, but maybe you might have a very different view on that. I think it might be helpful to have a guide in there. You've got a fair bit of money with 30,000 for the year. Actually, you could do some really good projects out of that.
Yeah.
But members might want to just consider whether to cap any one grant at a particular level within that. And the other principle there is that essentially grants will be considered, although we haven't got that many left in this year, but if this were to run into subsequent years, could come to any meeting of the Leisure Services Committee with recommendation strategy and resources, so we wouldn't be restricted to a particular time of year. We could just take those as they come and go into the next meeting, which would be a good way forward. As I said, some of that may be less applicable in this financial year because we're already halfway through it. But going forwards, that might be something that continue to be on that.
Councillors, any questions? Carol?
Yes, I don't have too many problems with the grants. I think it's a kind of a standard format. I think it is a good idea to have some sort of guidance on the maximum, but maybe we should stress that each applicant, each grant application should be considered on its merit, and that we won't ignore people that want a bit more. It may be at the end of the year and there's some money left, etc. I'm just a little bit well, about concerned, confused, I think. The S&R committee decided to disband the Youth Service Task and Finish Working Group, which was a YSTNF. And now we've got a YSSTNF. It seems to be that we've just inserted one word, and I'm actually interested in knowing what changes there'll be, because one of the things that this new task force, Task and Finish Working Group should be doing is looking at what's out there already, who's providing what, and what people want and what youth want. And in fact, if you look at the back page, it talks about C, to appropriately engage and communicate with children and young people.
Are we talking about the criteria?
No,
We're supposed to be talking about the criteria,
I'm,
which is 9A. We haven't moved on to the rest of that agenda item yet.
okay,
So if
it's
you
one of the
can-
recommendations.
Okay, well, we can take one of each recommendation as we go, so we don't sort of like run away, talk about something else. We're supposed to be talking about the criteria. Because what I'd like to do, if it's all right, is to ask the other councillors if they've got any questions, or they'd like to make any changes to the criteria, then to be able to propose and second that and have a vote on it before we move to the next agenda item under that mic.
I'm happy to move the criteria as set out in Appendix 9A. I think I take Carol's point about capping, but I think the wording there gives flexibility to go above 3,000,
Yeah, I think
which
that's-
will normally be capped.
I could add a line in there to say that all applications will be considered on merit, but
I think that's all right.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
3,000, so
Yeah.
it's-
So
Do we feel that 3,000 is too small a number? Do we think it should be more than that?
If the thing is, if somebody comes up with a brilliant idea which is going to work, if they have more,
Yeah.
then obviously we should consider that.
We should do
And I
that.
think if you get smaller groups that actually feel that they can do something with £3,000 and make a difference,
Okay,
that might be.
all right, that's good. Excellent then. So we'll put some words into on merit, as Carol has suggested. Carol,
Yes, it is difficult actually talking on one specific thing because it covers everything, but under the proposal, it talks about consideration of any required amendments to the strategy for youth services.
how does it say that, Carol?
It's
Item
the
9B.
last bullet.
We're on 9A. I thought we were talking about the criteria.
We're still on 9A.
We're still on 9A, Carol. We haven't moved to the next agenda item. So I want to, we've had a proposal from Mike Kennedy on to accept the criteria as laid out in 9A. Kay, do you second that? Then can we have a quick vote, please, on the criteria for 9A? All those who reject, all those who abstain. 9A is carried. Right then. Kevin, do you want to just go through the?
Yeah, sure.
Do a summary on that first.
Yes, yeah. So as Carol just mentioned, the S&R Committee on 30th of July also resolved to disband the Youth Services Task and Finish Group, which reported to Strategy and Resources. That had been tasked specifically with tendering for a service level agreement and making a recommendation on a provider for that service, which it wasn't able to do as we didn't actually get any tender submissions. The second part of that resolution was that Leisure Services review the youth and support provided by the council going forwards and make a recommendation to Strategy and Resources. So in that context, obviously there's a number of tasks that would be required in order to review what the council wants to do going forwards. That would include finding out what's already being carried out by other providers, what this council wants to do, targeting of specific youth groups, clarifying some of those things, also exploring some of the things that may not have actually been explored previously. There have been lots of suggestions about different things which had not fitted what the council was looking to do at that time. I think what S&R's asked for Leisure to do is to kind of ground zero, what do we want to do, and make some recommendations on that basis, and almost kind of not forget about the past at all, but actually not be tethered to it in that way, but perhaps look a little afresh at what the council could do, even with a bigger budget or a different budget, whatever that might
I mean, one of the things that's been suggested on the terms of reference, for example, is that we'll carry out a survey of the schools and youth groups and these other interested parties, so that we can get some real on the ground feedback as to what people or young people are looking for. Now, that could be representation, that could be different types of services or things we have not considered in. But at the same time, that task and finish group will consider as part of their terms of reference, they want to be expected to deliver on those things so that they can come back to those services, reports, and on to the next steps.
So that proposal is that this committee might be minded to appoint a working party, a task force group to do that in a smaller group in a shorter space of time. That's going to be quite a challenge to do in any other way. And we've proposed some draft terms of reference there on page 19, consideration of what that group might be tasked with.
Page 19. There we go. Bidley say, page 19. Councillors, have you read through that appendix? Does anyone have any questions in terms of the scope of the new task and finish group?
Yes. What I was trying to say before, so I hope I'm not repeating.
You were just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
But it talks under C on the back page about appropriately engage and communicate with children and young people in Woodley. I put how. And then the second one, D, is to engage an organisation, a survey to be funded outside of the SLA. Where is the money to come from? I think there's quite a few questions about these terms of reference, and I appreciate they are draft terms of reference, but I think the first item, agenda item for the working group should be to look at those in detail and consider them to see actually whether they can be achieved. There's no mention in this list of any place-based activities. Town council owns buildings and facilities, so we're actually in a good position to provide a home for these activities. We wouldn't have the cost of having to hire a premises or whatever. I looked at the strategy and looked at what the consultants have put forward. They were talking about the costs of place-based activities being between 20 and £100,000. Wow, how did they get to that figure? So I looked in that again, and they were actually comparing, looking at what the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea do. Well, if you could get any further away from Woodley in terms of what we do, what we don't do, that's it. So I think a lot of their comments need to be taken with a very big pinch of salt. Wiltshire County Council actually manage one of the very much smaller budgets, and Leatherhead have a youth project. There's loads of examples much closer to us. They're still not a town. They're more of a, Leatherhead is bigger than us, obviously. So I think the plant-based activities should be in the terms of reference. And I don't think we should just put things in and not explain how they're going to be achieved, because C and D tried that before, failed miserably. So we need to look at how we can improve that.
I think
And then
it's
finally,
yeah, are you final?
I finished, yeah. And finally, it's talking about the size of the councillors. I think it should be based on ability, and I think a size like that, I think, may include a well-qualified member. Maybe age should come into it, but that's another one. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. I appreciate your comments. I think from our perspective, looking through this, as Kevin said, I think we're starting very much with a blank sheet of paper again, to examine the strategy that we were given some years ago, which did come in for us time. And I think rightly so, we should test those sorts of things to make sure that they're appropriate for Woodley. But I think also things like to appropriately engage do give the working group scope to make their own decisions as to how they engage and communicate with young people. And that gives them the scope to be able to choose which way is the best way of doing that to get the results that they need. And so to be too prescriptive in this scope will actually hamper their ability to do what they need to do without too much, so this is very much written in that way. And I think it does cover things like auditing the services that are currently in Woodley, looking at all sorts of different options and their impacts, surveying young people to find out what they want, then hopefully coming up with some recommendations that we can then examine in a bit more detail and then bring forward to a final recommendation. We can then go back to full council and say, okay, we'd like to do this. And that will take some time to do. I think if we start off with a good document like this, which gives a fairly broad scope, that'll be very good to take. So, does any other council have any other comments? Rob?
Just to clarify something that Carol just stated, said, wouldn't you want as big as Leatherhead? The population of Leatherhead is approximately 1/3. That would be now.
Is it? Yeah.
I didn't know.
Can I just to add something for information under item C? There is £5,000 allocated separately in the budget for carrying out a survey of young people, so that wouldn't come from the
For the 27th degree.
but again, though that's what's in there in the budget, and I think the principle of this would be to discuss what would be possible, even if the budget was changed.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Darren?
Yes.
So one other thing, if we agree, Carol's raised a couple of points here regarding A to J. We're not setting this in stone today if we agree this.
No,
The committee, this subcommittee can tweak them and.
also can. They can always come back to those services, they would like to make some changes.
Because,
Yeah,
because it's, it's a new, it's the same topic, but it's a new group, and we've got hold of it now a bit more, I don't know, a bit more robustly. And I know we are all passionate about it. And I think really just to give the subcommittee this is great. Brilliant. Good.
Thank you.
The community youth partnership will also be involved, and they'll be obviously giving their opinions as well.
Yeah.
So we should have a full.
Okay. All right then, and as far as that's concerned, then I think can we need to improve terms of reference? Yes. Okay, so councillors have all seen Appendix A on page 19, terms of reference for a new youth task and finish group. All those in favour, please show. All those against? Item
It's the
9B, Appendix A. These are the terms of reference for the task and finish group.
So it's a third bullet we're voting on. Yeah, okay.
All those in favour? All those against? All those abstaining? Those terms of reference. I'd then like to ask for nominations for the working group. As far as I'm concerned, Carol, do you want to go through and I'll say Carol. From the Conservative side, we're going to appoint a team of 4 councillors. There's 3 Conservatives and 1 Labour. For the Conservatives, we're going to appoint Katie Elder, Mike Kennedy, and Michael Birmingham. They would be our votes, the youth and finish group. As Labour are not here, we cannot ask them their nomination. I can tell you that this town council has requested that they provide it, and I haven't heard from them.
To resolve at this meeting that you will be happy to take their appointment by email after the meeting.
Yes, I'll be very happy to do that because I do want someone from their group to be involved. I'm just sad to see that they're not here today. And go on to anything else on this item? No, I need to resolve. Right, in that case, we'll go on to item 10 then, which is mixed recycling bins in Woodford Park. and to receive an update from the town clerk.
Yes, so it's something I've been talking about for some time. I'm pleased to report we will be trialling some new style bins which provide a segregated recycling and general waste facility in Park. Essentially what we'll have is an additional recycling skip down at the yard. The guys will empty the bins, put the recycling in there. We've spoken with our waste carrier who's got a better system than the previous one. They've got a very swanky system which filters out things using lasers and cameras and all sorts of other things to separate out recycling from other things. Obviously, the more we can segregate it before it gets that far, the more likely it is that will be successfully recycled. We're thinking we will try it. We're just looking at which units to actually use, because they do need to be particularly robust. So we're ironing out the details, but that's the planning. We'll have some segregated recycling bins in the park, and we'll see how it goes. What we will be able to do is report back on how much is being directly recycled, so we'll know how to work.
Do you know when that will start to happen? Any ideas when time?
Soon, when Colin's back off holiday, we're going to decide on the bin and buy some. So
Excellent.
Robert, have it modelled here. There is a huge cost saving, isn't there? Because recycling waste is a lot cheaper per tonne.
it is, yeah, and although they do, as I said, they do recycle from the general waste, it doesn't go to landfill or anything. They do have a mechanism for doing that.
Yeah.
But as you say, the more that we can segregate beforehand, that is cheaper to.
Carol.
Yes, Elms Lane Field, working Town Council runs, they have recycling bins, the 3 types of bins. If the officers are still looking at which bins to go for, it might be worth talking to them.
Take a look.
That's my weekend sorted. Yeah, good plan.
Absolutely. Okay, anything else? Okay, item 11, future agenda items. I do have one. We've got Park and Leisure the next time. We also add, is it Keeble? We can't.
Yeah.
Prepare a report for improvement and beautifying of that park area, which is in need of much better investment. Let's do that.
Could we have an update, please, on water bits and pieces, Kevin, and the path around the park? I know you said it was going to go on your list of projects.
Yeah, they will go to strategy resources next week. Go on for the program mechanism, and then subject to that being okayed, we'll crack on. But I'll certainly report that back so that we can tell it.
Okay, then I'll go on to item 12, which is publicity and website. Does anyone have any recommendations or suggestions for that? Rob?
It might be barking up a wrong tree, but is it worth writing to the heads of all the schools in the area, just outlining the antisocial behaviour we've had in the park? Yes, children and adults, we will act in such a way, but the actions that's gone in the memorial garden are abhorrent. And these, I think, should be brought to people's attention and reminded of consequences of actions.
Okay.
I think we should be advertising the parties. That would.
Do it.
I think that's going to be really good.
Yes.
I've got some plans for that. So yeah, coming along slowly. I want to get out. Yeah.
It's good we consider actually advertising for comments from youngsters about what they want to see as a starter for the task and finish working group.
That'll be part of their, as part of their terms of reference. So yes, that'll be good. That's part of the terms of reference.
It will be, but I mean, it might as well start off now. It won't do anything.
No, the task and finish group will take the actions they seem appropriate. I'll leave them to make their decisions. Good, okay, well, it is 9:15 nearly. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and this meeting is closed. Thank you.